Amen. Amen. Well, let's jump into some good word this morning. Y'all doing okay? First Sunday, November. It ain't cold, though. Mercer had homecoming yesterday. It might have been the hottest game we had all year. Jesus Christ. I was like, man. You know, I guess that's what happened when you live in Middle Georgia. It ain't like living up north. Up north, it's about 30 degrees up there right now, you know. So I don't think we're going to see snow this winter. So y'all ain't got to worry about getting out your snow coats. Ain't got to worry about getting out your snow coats. We're going to be coming from the book of Matthew, chapter 16 this morning. So if you want to turn there with me. Y'all can stay seated. I'm going to probably talk for a little bit before. I don't want y'all to be standing for 20. I don't know. I might ramble for a little bit. So I don't want y'all to. But we're going to start at verse 13, and then we'll go as necessary. One of the things about the society that we live in now is we live in this, what they call an information age, a technology era. Right? And we have so much available to us, so much information in our faces at all times. I mean, it is constantly, you know, on my iPad, I get updates from different news sources, the Macon Telegraph, CNN, and all that. And there's constantly things that pop up time after time. If I leave my iPad for 5 minutes, when I come back, I got 10 new messages from just media outlets. And then there's also the Instagrams and the Facebooks where everybody is an activist and everybody has the answers and everybody's posting all the articles and everybody's doing all of this, right? And listen, it's great that we need to be reading this stuff, right? It's great. We have to be informed. There's a great theologian that said that in the morning, you should have the Bible in one hand and a newspaper in the other. Because we have to pray for the culture that is around us. We have to be in understanding with the things that are going on around us. But we also have to have the Word of God that supersedes all of that. And so this idea of having so much information, there's so many things coming at us, sometimes it's hard for us to really sit back and form our own opinions. Form our own thoughts, come to our own conclusions, right? Because what we'll do is we'll read and we'll talk to people, and we never take time to sit back and say, well, this is how I actually feel about this. You guys may be familiar. There's a show on Fox Sports 1, and it's called Undisputed, right? And it's a sports talk show. And there's a guy on there named Shannon Sharp out of Savannah, Georgia. Right? And there's another guy named Skip. Shannon Sharp is about as country as they come, right? Former NFL player, Hall of Famer. And I was when I watched this show, I mean, almost every day, at least catch snippets of it through YouTube, right? And I was having a conversation with one of our players one day, and we were talking about, I can't remember, it was something going on in the NFL or college football, and we were talking, and everything that he was saying was the exact same thing that Shannon Sharp had said on the show the day before. I mean, it was almost like, I'm like, dude, have you even, I mean, you're regurgitating exactly what Shannon, and I told him, I was like, bro, you know I watch first. You know I watch the show. You know, it's like, I watch the show. I know where you get. He was like, yeah, but I just thought it was true because it sounded good. You know, and that's what we do. We hear things, we read things. Like a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this too, like Facebook, we'll see headlines, won't read the article, but then we'll see somebody say, you saw did what? And it's like, yeah, did you read the article? No, but I saw the headline. It looked serious. Right? Because we're focused on what we can see and what's given to us. And we never take time to step back and say, well, how do I feel about that? What are my thoughts about that? What is the conclusion that I come to? And this thing flows into our faith. It's not just in the culture, it's not just in the news, but it flows into our faith. Because what happens is right now we are in one of the most biblically illiterate times that we have ever been in. I mean, when you think about the statistics and you go, I mean, you can just go and Google. And you can Google people reading their Bible, Christians reading their Bible, and the numbers are absolutely alarming. I mean, the statistics say that most houses Most Christian families will have 4 Bibles in a house. But most families, most people, most Christians maybe only read their Bible once a week. Once a week. Very high percentage don't read it at all. Another high percentage reads it a few times a month. So it's alarming statistics, right? It just, John Piper, who's famous pastor and theologian, and he has this statement. And John Piper's the wrong person to listen to if you're feeling good about your Christian walk. Like, the dude will make you feel bad. And so he had this saying in this sermon I was listening to one time. He says that we can't expect to watch television for 3 hours, read our Bibles for 30 minutes, and expect true transformation. We can't watch TV for 3 hours, read our Bible for 30 minutes, and expect true transformation. And he just punched me all in my throat. I started coughing as I read. Hey, don't come for me today, John. You know what I mean? Don't come for me. But this is a true statement, because we spend more time doing other things than we do spending time with God. And this is counter the gospel. Because Jesus Christ, the Gospels are absolutely saturated with language that says there has to be a relationship. You have to spend time with me. You have to get to know me. And we see this as a great example in Matthew chapter 16, right? And I'm going to start at verse 13 here. And I'll read from the English Standard Version. And this is in the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew's the first gospel, of course. And Jesus' ministry is growing at this point. You know, Matthew's chapter 16, so we're a little bit past halfway here in the gospel. We've already gone through the birth narrative and the Sermon on the Mount, and we've gone through all these things, and Jesus has given us some good stuff, and his disciples have begun to grow. People are starting to follow him. His ministry is starting to expand, right? But the thing that happens, right, Jesus is becoming popular around the land, and we all know once you start to get popular and people start liking you, it's just as many people that don't like you. So just as your supporters grow, so do the haters, right? And so Jesus is here at about this point, and he's just had this conversation about the Pharisees and the Sadducees, right? He's just talked to the disciples about them, and then he draws away with his disciples, and he has this conversation with them, and he says this in verse 13. It says, "Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked the disciples, 'Who do people say that the Son of Man is?' Verse 14, and they said, 'Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah, one of the prophets.' Verse 15, and he said to them, 'But who do you say that I am?' Simon Peter replied, 'You are the Christ, Son of the living God.' And Jesus answered him, 'Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven.'" In verse 18, he says this, "And I tell you, you are Peter. But I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." When I read this text, I like to break it. I like to break it into two parts, and I'm going to do that here. And it's really two things that we want to focus on here. And I think the first one is what Jesus gives us is probably the most important question that we need to be able to answer as believers. the most important question that us, as we're calling ourselves professing Christians, that we need to be able to answer. Right? Because Jesus gets here and he asks the first question. He says to them, well, who do people say that I am? And Jesus understood that they would know who people says it, because everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a thought. Everybody's got something to say. And it's crazy because I look at the language here and it says this right here first. It says, who do people say that the Son of Man is? And the Son of Man is simply a title that Jesus used. And it's kind of a way that he simply just kind of normalized himself, kind of made himself just as human, right? Because there were some secrecy when it came to Jesus in the gospel. You know, there were times where he said, go and tell no one about this. And it wasn't that he was afraid, but he understood he had something to do. And if certain things were spread, his time may be cut short. So there were certain ways that he had to go about it. And so he didn't always refer to himself as the Son of God. Sometimes he just simply said, Son of Man, right? And so he says, who do people say that the Son of Man is? And listen, this is important. He says, and they said. Now, I'm not no English grammaticianer, but they seems to be the plural form. So it seems that all the disciples had heard what they said. I don't know about y'all, but when I was young and I used to say they said, that's usually when it came. A belt was coming slowly after that from my mama. You know, well, why you do that? Well, they said. Well, they said. And it says that they said, and listen, it's not like they disrespected Jesus. They weren't, calling him bad names. They were actually giving him pretty good props. Right? Because as they said, who do they say? Some say John the Baptist. I mean, John the Baptist by this point had been beheaded. If you go back in the Gospels a few chapters back, he had already been beheaded, right? And then there's Elijah, and then there's Jeremiah, or one of the prophets, right? So they were understanding of something, that this dude is not just a normal person. But there was a difference between they and the disciples. It was a difference between what do the people say and the disciples. And Jesus was trying to make this distinction, because this is the thing about the people. All they saw was the outside. They saw certain things about Jesus, but they, who are the disciples, were with Jesus every day. So the first part of this is answering this question. But who do you say that I am? But who do you say that I am? But the disciples were because this is, and they replied. They were so consumed with what everybody else was saying. When Jesus asked this question, it kind of got quiet. Because when you go down to verse 16, it says, Simon Peter replied. That's one person. That's singular. So we went from a plural to a singular. So see, they had influenced the masses. But there was this one person, Simon Peter, who said, no, I know who you are. I understand who you are. They've said a lot of things, but they ain't spent time with you. They say a lot of things, but all they see is what's on the outside. They say a lot of things, but they don't know you in the same way that I know you. See, it's something different, like when you really get to know somebody. You ever about to do something with somebody? Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a business partnership, maybe it's just getting a ride or something. They're like, well, I'm gonna tell whatever. They're good people now. Them good people. You spend 15 minutes when you be like, this is the worst human being I've ever been around in my life. Because we listen to they say. But if we just continue to listen to what they say, we never form our own opinions and we never dig into this relationship. And Jesus is calling us, when he asks this question, this is an important question, because when he's asking this, he's not focusing on the outside, because that's what they focus on, the outside. He's focusing on the heart. You who have spent time with me, you who have walked this earth with me, you who have seen me pray, you've seen me draw up to the mountains, you've seen the miracles I've done, you've heard the things that I've taught, you've been with me every step of the way. Now, who do you say that I am? Now, going back to this issue of biblical illiteracy, the statistics that I read do not exclude kingdom life. Because many of us in here, we come in here on Sunday, we got our Bibles ripe and ready. We get in the car, we throw it in the back seat, and we pick it up on Sunday. No time throughout the week, because we get in this mode of it's just, and I say it, and I try to stop saying it, but it's like everybody in the world is just the busiest person you done ever met. Every time you talk to somebody, you say, hey, what's going on? How you been? Oh, man, and they hit you on the run. They don't even know, people don't even stop and talk to you no more. I just been busy, but I'm going to get at you, though. Get back at me, People can't even stop and have a conversation. It's like, what are you doing? You don't own a company, right? You ain't got 7 kids. You ain't got that much going on. It ain't that, Macon ain't that popping, right? You can't be that busy. But everybody's just so crazy busy, and everybody's got so much going on that we're too busy to do the things that we need to do. And Jesus is saying, I need you to sit back. I need you to sit down. I need you to read your word, because I'm trying to reveal to you who I am. Because what we do is we come in here and we have our Bibles on Sunday, and we sit in our pews and we shout amen, and we clap and we stand and we dance and we put our money in the bucket and we take the communion and we shouting during worship and we do all these great things, but then we leave here and Jesus never passes through our lips. We never sit and take time to pray. We never sit and take time to read our Bible. We have absolutely no understanding of who he is. Our understanding of who Jesus is whatever the person standing up here says he is. That's who you know him to be. Some of us only know what Rev comes and preaches up here every Sunday. And if he don't preach it, we don't know it. It's like I was just reading over statistics, and I was like, I want to read some of these verbatim. I was like, but it's too many. It's like they were saying like a percentage of Christians couldn't even identify what the Gospels were. And maybe that pertains to some of us in here. But the good thing is the time is not up. That we still have time, right? And so we come in here and Rev preaches, and that's our word for 7 days. That's what we're leaning on for 7 days. But then with most of us, is we're not taking notes, and we're like, oh, I get it all up in here. I'm a hearer. I'm not a writer. But then you leave, and a couple hours later, somebody say, hey, what was church about? Jesus was in there somewhere. And the cross, he talked about that. Because we're not really becoming students. We're not really becoming people who are engaged with Christ, right? And Jesus is saying this, listen, who do you say? This is the question that matters. Right? It's not, listen, you're not going to get to the gates and Jesus is going to say, how much did you put in the offering plate? How many times did you attend church? He's not going to look at you and say, when Pastor Dominique preached this week on this subject, what did he say? But he's going to want to know, who do you say that I am? His whole thing is the relationship that you have with him. When you go back and you look in the book of Matthew, right, and he talks about in Matthew chapter 7, he says, ask and ye shall find. No, ask and it shall be given. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and the door shall be open. He's saying, come after me because I'll give you me. Wow. There's never a point where you chase after him and he says, no. You can't have me. Because the same Christ that freely and willingly gave himself on the cross, freely and willingly gives himself to you. He is not selfish. And so if nothing else, if you hear nothing else, if you've heard nothing else, the question I want you to think about, the question I want you to answer, who do you say that he is? Because to me, he's something, but to you, he's something else. It works in two ways. It works in this sense of community, but it also works in this sense of the individual. Because I have to individually begin to pray and form my relationship with him, but I also have to get into community because it helps me form my answer to this. But I can't completely just do one because then I'm missing something. That's the importance of the body. We need the body. The body is what pushes us further. It challenges us. It stretches us to become more mature Christians. But we also, because just as Jesus spent time with the 12 and he spent time preaching, he spent time in the mountains by himself. But to do one only is to miss it. And you're shorting yourself of what the gospel truly is. So the question I ask is, who do you say that he is? And this works in a way too, because when you look at Romans chapter 10, verse 9, Paul makes this statement. He says that there's a confession with the mouth and there's believing in the heart. So when I know who he is, I can begin to say who he is. And in the process of learning and knowing who he is, my faith is growing. Because when I confess with the mouth and I believe with my heart, this is how I become saved. This is what true salvation is like. I know a lot of us, we just simply reduce it to this moment of coming up here to the altar and saying a short prayer. But the truth of it is, I have to confess with my mouth. I have to say who he is. And then when I say that, I have to believe that in my heart. That is what salvation is. That is the starting point. And then there's the maturity and the growth along that way. And so then there's the second part of this. So the first part is just identifying who I say that he is. And then the second part is this. When you go to verse 15, when you go to 17. Now I'm going to go back to 16. Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, Son of the living God." 17. And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail." Two important things right there. Because Simon understood who he was. He could answer the question, right? So Jesus referred to himself, and we talked about this a little bit. Jesus referred to himself as the Son of Man. Who do they say that the Son of Man is? And we talked about why he uses this phrase and why he talks like this. But then Peter comes back, and what does Peter say? "You are the Son of the living God." So Jesus says, "I am the Son of Man." And then Peter comes back and says, "You are the Son of the living God." See, Peter's revelation has taken him to somewhere else that people didn't understand. Because Jesus revealed himself in a way that wasn't wrong, because he is fully divine and fully human. And we need both parts of that. So he is the Son of Man, but he's also the Son of the living God. But Peter had this understanding that he was the Son of the living God. And then he says this. And Jesus answered, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah." Bar-Jonah is just saying the son of Jonah. "For flesh and blood has not revealed to you this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter." So in verse 16, he referred to as Simon. And then again in verse 17, he calls him Simon. And then we get to 18, and he begins to call him Peter. Because this is what happens when we begin, right? When we get to the point and we start to understand and we can identify who he is, then he reveals to us who we are. And until we can identify who he is, we're kind of missing who we are. Because before this moment, Peter was Simon. But then Jesus says, no. You're starting to figure it out. Because we'll never figure it all out. You never know all the answers. But he's like, you spent that time and the relationship is there and you're starting to figure this thing out. You're not Simon, you're Peter. And Peter is the word that means rock. And on this rock I will build my church. And Peter becomes basically what is like the first pope of the Catholic Church. And he is like the foundation of this thing. And many of us are searching for purpose. We're searching for what to do in life. We're searching for who we are. We're searching for all these things, but we haven't searched for God. And so therefore we're missing the whole thing. Until we encounter him, we're missing the whole thing. Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Life is like the best-selling book in the world next to the Bible. Because people are searching for purpose. And until you have purpose, your life is empty. I just listened to an interview of, I'm still saved. I listened to a rapper's interview on the radio the other day, right? And he was talking about how he had all these best-selling hits and all these best-selling things. He just dropped a new album, right? And he's like, I got all these hits and I've been on this. But he was like, it was something missing the entire time. I just don't know what it is. And I wish I could have popped in the radio on that brother's like, bro, you missing Jesus? And then pop back out. But he didn't understand that. See, he's missing something. Because he was like, I thought that when I got all the money, I would be good. He was like, but it lasted for a minute, but it just don't bring happiness. And I got all the jewelry, and I thought I'd be good. And I got me a Bugatti, and I thought I was good. But we're searching for purpose, and we're searching for everything, but we're trying to find it and see if we don't begin to seek him for our purpose, we'll look to other people and try to take their purpose. See, it's like when Rev is up here preaching and we hadn't searched and Rev is in the Bible and he understands his purpose and what he's doing and he starts to say things and you just like, oh, that does sound cool. I'll probably just do that then. But that's not your purpose. You can't base your purpose off, and we're in a world where comparison is like the biggest thing, right? People sit up there and look at Instagram and all these social media sites, and it's just simply comparison, right? And, social media has people thinking that entrepreneurship is like simple. Like you just post in your little profile, I sell t-shirts, and like everybody just gonna start flocking to buy t-shirts. I'm a rapper. And then you post up your SoundCloud link and you just think everybody finna be like, oh, you popping, but you suck. You know what I mean? That's not your purpose. And the concept of entrepreneurship is not easy. How great it is when you start that process and you grind through it and you get to a certain point. But starting is not easy. And see, we see things and we compare and you listen to somebody, you're like, oh, I'm better than him, but you're not. My stuff look better than theirs, but it doesn't. But the only way we get our purpose, the only way we find out who we are is when we find out who he is, right? We have to begin to wrestle, right? Take us back to Jacob in Genesis 32, right? Jacob had this encounter, this moment where he wrestled. And he was Jacob, and then he wrestled and he wrestled and he wrestled. And then there came this moment, it's like, you are no longer Jacob. You are now Israel. Because he changes. What happens is, relationship gives revelation. And revelation changes our reality. But see, we don't focus on the relationship, so we miss the revelation, and we're stuck in a reality that we don't like. It's just like Paul. Paul had this encounter on the road to Damascus. And his whole life was changed. Our lives were changed. Because Paul had a moment. He had an experience. There's this church I used to go to. And when I was in Greenville, when I was in college. And they had this motto. And the motto said, can't be explained, only experienced. And that's what Christ is. I could tell you all day who he is to me. Listen, I could preach you from Genesis to Revelation. I could preach the whole week. If y'all got some time, we can stay here. I'll preach you all 66 books right now. Right? It might get a little iffy up there in Leviticus now. Y'all don't know about that. Right? But I could preach you through all the books. And you can sit there, listen, and be attentive. But it doesn't matter what I say. What do you say? Who do you say that he is. Take this and let it help you grow, but I want you to grow. I want you to become who God has called you to be. I want you to develop into God who God is. And see, that's the thing. Going back to this thing of purpose, like we're trying to find who we are and all this, and we look for everything else. But it's like if you had a brand new car, say I went Oprah Winfrey and just bought everybody a new car in here. Right? And the car had a bunch of stuff on it. Just bells, whistles, buttons, heaters, coolers, containers, whatever you got in there. Now, if you just want to start driving that thing and you just like, I know how a car works. Then you just start driving and start going. Then you want to do something. Well, what is? Hold on. It's kind of cold outside. Where the heat at? These cars getting difficult now. You're like, where the heat at? Well, that's red, so that might be heat. And you click it, it's the hazard lights, and you're like, oh, shoot. Hold on, that ain't it. But if you took time to just look at the manual, it'll tell you exactly. Because, see, a lot of us haven't looked at the manual, and so there are things inside of us that we haven't used that we are fully capable of doing. There are things inside of us that we are so destined for, and because we haven't read the manual, because we haven't used the manual, we don't know what's in there. And so we're struggling, and we're using somebody else's take on the manual. So I'm sitting here and I'm saying, well, Shamika told me this, so I know that's what God got for me. No, that's what God had for Shamika. Until you pick up your manual, you don't know how to drive your car. How terrible is it to be able to drive somebody else's car through life and not your own? Because it'll never run the same way. Relationship leads us to revelation. And revelation changes our reality. But if you don't dive into that relationship, because he tells Peter, he says, man didn't reveal this to you. Man didn't reveal this to you. But my Father who is in heaven revealed this to you. But how bad do you really want the revelation? We talk about how we want to be so strong and, we want to be that Christian and, I want to devote my life to God. I'm going to give him everything. I mean, it's November, and some of us probably ain't read our Bible outside of church 10 times. Because you can't. It's like with anything in life. If you want to become a top exec of a business, you're not going to do it. You're not going to become the top exec doing the bare minimum. If you want to be the greatest athlete, you're not going to become the greatest athlete doing the bare minimum. I'm going to stay on the athlete thing because that's where I am. But it hurts me that so many athletes, I see so many athletes who are so talented, but they just underachieve. And it's not because they don't have the talent naturally in them. It's because they refuse to put in the work to bring that talent out. And what I want to convey to you is that you have so much built up inside of you. God has given you everything that you need to be who you are. That's the faith of it. Faith and works, right? You've got the faith, or you believe. Listen, some of y'all will sit here and pray all day. But what is the work that you put behind it? Listen, our righteousness is not based on works, but you got to understand. T.D. Jakes said this. This was good to me. I'm closing, y'all. T.D. Jakes said this. This is an interview he had with Furtick about his book the other day. He said this. He said, this is the issue. Tables and chairs, he had a table and a chair by him, are made out of wood. And he said, what I have is people praying for tables and chairs. That's what people are praying for, tables and chairs. He said, but God doesn't give tables and chairs. What God does is he gives you a tree. so you can build the tables and the chairs. God has given you everything that you need. God has put it inside of you. Just like the car, you got all the bells and whistles, you got all the knobs, you got everything. I mean, you are the most luxury car there is. If they put you on the market, couldn't nobody buy you. But you don't know how to use it because you ain't read the manual. And you haven't built a relationship. So you don't have the revelation and you don't like your reality. Build the relationship, get the revelation, and change your reality. Matthew 6:33, my favorite verse. Seek first the kingdom of God and all His righteousness, and all things will be given to you. Seek first. Seek first. Listen, I'm not trying to insinuate that it's wrong to read the articles. I'm not trying to insinuate that it's wrong to watch the television shows and to go have fun and hang out with people. You have that is a part of life. But what I'm telling you is when those things become more important than seeking Him, we have an issue. Because just in the same way that I had an experience with Christ in 2010 that has changed my life, I want you to have that same experience if you haven't. And if you've had that experience, I want you to begin to dive further into that relationship so you can figure out fully who you are. And I'm not looking to people to tell me who I am, because people will flake on you. People will tell you one thing one day and they'll tell you something else another day. But His word remains the same. His thoughts He knew you before you even born. Before you even thought of, He thought of you. He knows everything. He knows every hair on your head. He knows how great you are destined to be. So stop talking to people about what you want to do and start talking to God about what you want to do. Stop talking to people about what you want to become and start telling God, listen, I want to become stronger. I want to build my faith. Give me a deeper relationship. Do you know how many times I pray, God, I just want to fall more in love with you. I'm not telling people I want to fall in love with Him. I'm telling Him. So the altar is open.